Getting into a top university is tough, right? No matter where you come from, it's competitive. But what if I told you that where you're from could actually make it way harder to get into an Aussie uni?
Hmm. Interesting.
It's true. We're seeing Australian study visas getting denied to African students like
Hmm.
way more often than other students. Think 50% versus just 10% for applicants from, say, Europe or North America.
Wow, 50%. That's huge.
It is. And that's what we're diving into today. Why does this gap exist and what does it mean for, everyone, not just the students?
Yeah, I mean, on paper, the visa requirements seem pretty standard, right?
Right. Proof of enrollment, got to show you got the funds, English proficiency, the usual suspects.
Exactly. But, and I think this is where it gets interesting, the reality for many African students is there are these almost like hidden hurdles they have to deal with.
Hidden hurdles. Okay. You've piqued my interest. What kind of things are we talking about here?
Well, one of the big ones is the whole perception of economic risk. Many African countries are, unfortunately, seen as economically unstable. And because of that, some immigration officials kind of just assume these students might overstay their visas.
Even if they can prove they're financially secure.
Exactly. It's like this catch-22. They've shown they have the money, they have the acceptance letter, but there's still this underlying assumption.
So instead of looking at each student's application, like, individually on its own merits, there's this tendency to just make blanket assumptions based on where they're from.
Exactly. And it creates this frustrating situation, right? Because while there's this concern about potential economic burdens, they're totally overlooking the huge contributions African students make when they go back home after they graduate.
That's a really good point. What kind of impact are we talking about here?
We're talking a serious injection of skills, knowledge, right into the heart of developing economies.
Which translates into what exactly?
Growth. Economic growth for those nations. But when we're so focused on the what-ifs, the perceived risks, we miss the bigger picture. Everyone loses out.
And how does this information gap you mentioned earlier fit into all of this? It's not just perceptions.
No, absolutely not. Access to reliable, clear information about this whole visa process. It's crucial.
Makes sense.
Imagine a student, right? Super bright, killing it in school in a remote village somewhere. Maybe they don't have regular internet, let alone know the ins and outs of Australian visa requirements.
It's like, what do they even begin to Google?
Exactly. They might not have anyone to walk them through it, the whole thing, getting the right documents, writing a statement that's going to stand out, even just understanding the financial side of it.
So it's not always that they're not qualified, but they're starting the race way behind everyone else.
100%. And that's where targeted support, outreach, it could be a game changer.
So like what? Give me some examples.
Okay, so think online info sessions, but tailored for African students specifically. Or workshops in those communities, partnering with educational agencies already working in these countries. Meet them where they are.
Stuff like that could really keep the playing field, give these students a fighting chance.
Exactly. It's about making the system work for them, not against them.
100%.
And this is where, the whole cultural understanding piece comes in.
Okay. Yeah, let's talk about that.
So even with all the right info, a solid application, there's still a chance things can get, misinterpreted just because of cultural differences.
So what seems totally normal in one culture might raise eyebrows in another?
Exactly.
Yeah.
A statement, a phrase, even just the way something's worded. What flies in one place might not in another.
And that could actually hurt someone's chances of getting a visa.
It's a real risk. This lack of cultural awareness, it can creep into how applications are read, how they're judged.
You'd think, though, with Australia being so multicultural, they'd have systems in place to, navigate all that.
You'd hope so, right?
Yeah.
But there's definitely room for improvement. One idea being tossed around is mandatory cultural awareness training for those immigration officials.
Interesting.
Yeah, equip them with a deeper understanding of different cultures, different ways of doing things. Could make a big difference.
So we're not just looking at, checking boxes on an application. We're thinking about the whole person, the context.
Exactly. Diversity of thought, different backgrounds, experiences. It's something to be valued, not treated with suspicion.
For sure.
And this all ties into a bigger point, right? This isn't just about the students being denied. This is impacting Australia too.
Because when we say impact, we're not just talking about the individual students who are being denied, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about what Australia as a whole is losing out on.
Exactly. When brilliant minds are turned away, Australia misses out on their talent, their perspectives, their contributions. It's like a brain drain waiting to happen.
Not to mention the economic hit. Didn't we talk about like billions of dollars earlier?
Billions, yeah. International students pump over 40 billion Aussie dollars into the economy each year.
40 billion. Just to be clear.
40 billion. And that's just the immediate impact. Think long term. The ones who go back home with these valuable skills, they boost their own economies, become these global connectors.
It just seems so short-sighted to get caught up in the perceived risks, to not see the bigger picture, the potential.
It really is. And it's not just about the money, right?
Yeah.
There's the loss of diversity within the universities themselves.
Because a global education, I mean a real global education, it thrives on that exchange of ideas, those different backgrounds.
100% challenges students to think differently,
Yeah.
see things from multiple angles. Denying visas based on nationality, it holds everyone back.
So where do we go from here? We've talked about how complex this is, the downsides, what can actually be done.
Lots, actually. Simplifying the visa process would be huge.
Less like a bureaucratic maze, more about here's my talent, here's what I bring.
Exactly. Crystal clear guidelines, easy-to-use checklists, online portals that actually make sense. That's step one.
Love it. Okay, but what about those deeper issues, like the lack of awareness, the unconscious bias? How do we get at that? That's where those targeted support systems we were discussing earlier come in, right? Like cultural competency training for those making the decisions and building stronger bridges between Aussie universities and their counterparts over in Africa.
Exactly. Give those officials the tools, the understanding, so they can evaluate each applicant fairly.
So we can actually tap into the wealth of perspectives that are out there.
Exactly. And think about closer ties between schools, more collaboration, more exchange programs, maybe even scholarships specifically for these students.
Yeah, break down those financial barriers.
Exactly. And you know what else has been getting louder? This call for a total overhaul of Australia's visa system.
Really, a total overhaul.
Yep, especially the policies impacting students coming from Africa.
So basically hitting the reset button.
Kind of, yeah. Moving away from those regional stereotypes, focusing on individual merit. Making it truly a warm, welcoming environment for talent from everywhere.
It's hopeful, right? To think things could actually change.
Right. It's about recognizing that being more inclusive, it's not just the right thing to do, it benefits everyone.
100%. It reminds me, education, it has this power to break down those borders, connect people across the globe. And when we deny that access to education based on where someone's passport is from, I mean, we're all worse off.
We really are. It's a loss for the world.
It really is. Well, on that note, to everyone listening, next time you hear about these policies, these visa rules, remember there's a lot going on behind the scenes. And the impact, it goes way beyond just those individual students.
So much bigger, yeah.
It really is. And on that note, one last thought before we go. What can each of us do right here, right now, to push for a more fair, a more open global education system? Something to chew on until next time. Keep diving deeper, everyone.